Hello, my name is Lo, and I am currently incredibly frustrated with the vegan community. Unnatural Vegan uploaded a video on June 13th called "Do Vegans Need to Talk About Black Lives Matter?" in which her answer is essentially no. As you can tell by the title of this video, I disagree with her on that, and I think her video spreads a dangerous message to the vegan community, particularly to the Black vegan community. So I wanted to respond to some of the points that she makes in her video, address some of her following tweets, and talk about what I think the vegan community should be doing right now. But before I get into that, I want to say that I'm not speaking for Black vegans in this video. This is my perspective, which has been informed by both racist messaging that I've internalized and Black voices that I have tried to listen to. And I would love to hear any input from Black people, whether you're vegan or not. I'm hoping that the fact that I'm white might make this message a little more digestible for other white vegans, but my voice should definitely not be the only one you are listening to. So I'm going to start off this video by doing what I think Unnatural Vegan should have done in her video, and I'm going to share a list of Black vegan YouTubers who you should follow. My favorite Black vegan YouTuber is probably Herbivore Beauty, who makes videos about veganism as well as travel, self-care, and life in general. She has one specific video on veganism in the Black community, which I really appreciated more about and highly recommend. I also really love Abantu May, whose videos are primarily focused on Black identity and decolonization. She's super lovely and her videos are packed full of wisdom, and I would really recommend this video to any vegan activists who want to learn more about the cultural intersections with veganism. Jasmine C. Leva made a documentary called The Invisible Vegan, and she uploaded many of the interviews on her channel, as well as weekly vlogs. So if you're really looking to learn about race, politics, history, and food justice, check out this video and channel. Urban Black Vegan is just as proud of his blackness and veganness as his name suggests. He talks about Morningstar over hip-hop beats and is just very entertaining and informational and gives it to you straight. In this video, he talks about why race matters in vegan communities. The Sweetest Vegan also lives up to her name. She makes mostly recipe videos, but also made this one short video about how race and culture may influence a person's ability to be vegan. Sweet Potato Soul pretty exclusively posts vegan recipes and what I ate today's. I've actually been following her recipe blog for a while and didn't realize that she was on YouTube until just now. The Chick Natural is a very popular lifestyle channel making videos about hair, makeup, fashion, and of course veganism. What's Good Birdo makes a lot of vlogs, what I ate today's, food reviews, and other miscellaneous stuff. Tony Mitchell makes videos about health in general, so vegan tips, workouts, weight loss, etc. So True Q is an athlete, so he makes a lot of high-protein vegan meals and workout videos. That Sexy Juicing Vegan makes short little vlogs and casual recipe videos. There were also two other videos by non-Black people of color that discuss racism in the vegan community, so I wanted to shout those out as well. The first is a 2-minute message to vegans about racism and the importance of enacting the morals that made you become vegan and standing up for Black people during this time. And the second is a video about why this person is no longer vegan. And the second half of the video talks about racism and bullying in the vegan community and how veganism isn't necessarily always cruelty-free. I've put links in the description to everyone I've mentioned. If I talked about a specific video, then the link is to that video. Otherwise, it's just a link to their channel. And now, without further ado, back to Unnatural Vegan and my response. So what exactly is Unnatural Vegan saying in her video, and why do I disagree with it? Well, throughout the video, she repeats this thesis.
I don't think that there is a responsibility on any group, on any activist group, to speak out for a particular issue. If you are fighting for Black lives, I don't expect you to talk about veganism. If you want to, super cool. Thank you so much. But I'm not going to expect you to do that. If you be focused on your cause. That's totally fine. But please offer the same respect to us if we just want to focus on our cause, on animals. The reality is there's always atrocities. There's constant suffering in the world. That's why all of us do what we do. That's why those of us who are promoting a cause, that's why we do that. How do you pick and choose? Why do vegans have to talk about Black Lives Matter right now, but we don't have to talk about Muslims in China? We don't have to talk about Syria. We don't have to talk about Venezuela. We don't have to talk about Bolsonaro. Holy crap. I mean, I don't think anyone has a good answer for that. It's just that this is a big thing going on right now. I mean, at some point, it's all going to be watered down and every single activist group is going to be the same because we're all going to be talking about every single possible social justice issue in the world. And like, maybe that's not super effective.
All right, so I'll start with what I agree with. I think it's completely possible, and she's right that it's probably more effective, to mostly focus on one issue in a movement. Having one focus brings people together, makes policy proposals clearer, allows activists to really dig deep into that one issue and be able to talk about it more intelligently. But they should still acknowledge the intricacies of that one issue and be as inclusive as possible in the movement. I'll talk more about that later. I also agree that it's hard to decide what to focus on. I mean, yeah, no one has the brain capacity to always care about every issue in this country, much less the entire world. Even when I'm caffeinated, I can only really care about like 2 things per day. To some degree, we all have to pick and choose what to learn more about, what to get in a Facebook comment war with Aunt Stacy about, what to protest and sign petitions and call our representatives about. But I worry that she's bringing these other issues up not to raise awareness of them as worthy causes that we should also champion, but more as a way to distract from valid and pressing concerns about racism. This is called whataboutism, and it's a technique that is meant to derail the conversation with unrelated topics and discredit someone's position by charging them with hypocrisy instead of actually addressing the argument. Basically saying, oh, you're claiming this? Well, what about that? Why aren't you focusing on that? If I were a neckbeard, I would just say,
I see you have employed a logical fallacy because you cannot compete with my superior intellect. Checkmate.
But I respect Unnatural Vegan and I don't think she's that petty, so I'll take it as a good faith argument and address it anyway. So with this argument, she's essentially saying 2 things. That police violence against Black people and all of these other issues have approximately the same moral importance, and that right now, speaking out against police violence and speaking out against all of these other issues have the same moral importance as well. And that might seem like a bit of a pedantic detail to point out, but breaking it down like this lets us see that even if all of these issues are equally important, specific contexts might make it more morally important to speak out about one than the other. What I mean is that there's a difference between walking into a quiet room and not bringing up Bolsonaro or whatever, and walking into a room full of people talking about Black Lives Matter and deciding to not participate in the conversation. In the first situation, you're passively not addressing something. In the second situation, you're actively deciding that it isn't worth addressing. So the fact that this is a big thing going on right now does change the implications of your decision to speak up or not. Right now, when Black people are asking us to say the names of their murdered family members, it's a conscious choice to stay silent while the people around you all say the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Tony McDade, Dominique Fells, Rhea Milton, Sean Reed, Ayanna Jones, Iselle Ford, Ariane McCree, and so many others. I'm pretty sure that Unnatural Vegan herself has admitted in the past that she believes human lives are more important than animal lives, so it's kind of hypocritical to act like Black lives activists not speaking up about animal lives is the same as animal lives activists not speaking up about Black lives. But I'm betting that some of the people watching this video might believe that animal lives and human lives are on the same level, so that argument might not convince you. But when she says that Black Lives Matter should work the same as vegan activism, that nobody is required to vocally support it, but she appreciates anyone who does, I mean, supporting veganism is a bit more of a commitment than supporting Black Lives Matter. Reducing or eliminating your animal product consumption is a big and important and commendable decision to make. On the other hand, just acknowledging that Black Lives Matter is kind of the bare minimum of being a good person and doesn't really deserve praise and appreciation. Sorry, but you don't get a Trader Joe's chewy, chunky chocolate chip cookie for agreeing that Black people shouldn't be senselessly murdered by the police. But let's take a step back and go through her video from the beginning. She opens her video by talking about some controversial Instagram post by the vegan account Anonymous for the Voiceless, which essentially says that vegan activism shouldn't be intersectional because animals deserve a movement entirely about them. In response, she said this.
It's worse than not saying anything, and it's very confusing because it took more time. It took more time posting this and making this video than just writing Black Lives Matter and hitting send. Because they're not saying that they don't agree with Black Lives Matter. They're not saying that they don't agree with the protesting. They're just mad that people are asking them to show support. I don't know. It seems a little bit childish given the timing and the context.
So to summarize, she believes that even a small show of support for Black Lives Matter would have been a net positive impact. Saying nothing at all would have been a net neutral impact, and making several posts about why you shouldn't be required to talk about Black Lives Matter had a negative impact. And I agree with this mostly. I mean, I believe that silence in the face of injustice is complicity with the oppressor, so I think that not posting anything still would have had a net negative impact, but definitely a less negative impact than what they ended up actually doing. I agree with her here that it's childish to complain about being asked to show support for another movement. So why did she make a 33-minute long video doing exactly that?
I've talked a lot. My whole Twitter, pretty much everything I'm retweeting right now has to do with the protests. It's very important to me, and I don't have any problem sharing stuff like that. But am I gonna make a whole video on my channel just saying, hey, justice for George Floyd? No, that's just not what my channel is.
So she made a 33-minute long video about why she shouldn't have to talk about Black Lives Matter, instead of just continuing to retweet the stuff that she was already retweeting and maybe making a 5-minute video showing support for something that she said was already important to her. She's literally doing the exact same thing that she just called childish a few minutes earlier. She then talks about intersectionality in a few different contexts, and I actually agree with most of what she says in response to vegans who are not being intersectional.
I understand the aspect of intersectionality, which is how I see it, I think, most often used of as I said in a previous video, don't be an asshole, don't oppress other people in your activism. So a perfect example in terms of veganism would be PETA's fat shaming bullshit, right? That is totally inappropriate. And to be inclusive, to welcome all different people into the movement.
She also responds to someone comparing animal slaughter to the Holocaust by saying,
can we stop doing that? We know that this is so upsetting to people. Why? There's no reason to use that word. You have to have a little understanding of history when you do that. That often people who've been oppressed, I think in every single case ever, they've been compared to animals, and it's been a way to dehumanize them.
And she responds to a TikTok that equates Black Lives Matter and veganism by saying,
there is a history of comparing Black people to animals. I also don't think that you need to try and kind of co-opt another issue. There's, I don't think it's a good idea to say like, oh, you guys care about this. Well, what about this?
She also makes an incredibly good point about how vegans will often use quotes from MLK and other Black activists when talking about animals, but
then when you also are silent when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to protesting, when it comes to something this huge, it just feels like you're using it. It feels like you don't really care. You're just using it to promote your own cause, right? And yeah, just feels icky.
So when critiquing others, she very clearly understands the importance of intersectionality and inclusivity in vegan activism. And she condemns the fact that a lot of vegan activism is not intersectional or inclusive. She even says,
if you are a white person, particularly if you have a position of power in a situation, yeah, please speak up.
And yet, at the end of the day, she still uses her platform of 274,000 subscribers to say that vegans don't have to care or speak up about Black Lives Matter. So where's the disconnect here? I think we get a little bit of light shed on that question in the next section, in which she responds to 7 points of allyship for the white vegan community posted by Mercy for Animals. Despite the fairly decent analysis she gave earlier, she gets a little
all lives matter
here. In response to a suggestion that white people work
under the direction of Black leaders and collectives which are unapologetically Black-led,
she says,
are you saying that there is some sort of difference in our brains in how we think? I hate to say that's not what this country is about. God damn it. But, that's not what this country is about. That's not what America is about in terms of the best thing that America stands for to me is that color doesn't matter and that there isn't a barrier between us and that in all the relevant ways we are the same.
Which is disappointing. After talking about the mistreatment that Black people and Black vegans face,
the vegan movement does kind of have a history of not being super inclusive when it comes to Black people and other minority groups.
To then turn around and say that color doesn't matter in the United States and we're all the same, that's just clearly incorrect, and she obviously knows it. Just looking at racism in policing alone, we see that Black people make up about 25% of New York City's population, but 59% of NYPD's stop and frisks in 2019. Police tend to patrol Black neighborhoods at higher rates than white neighborhoods. Black people get imprisoned on drug charges 6 times more than white people, despite using drugs at similar rates. Data from 2013 to 2018 shows that Black people are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by the police. And right now, Black people make up 12% of the US population, but 33% of the US prison population. And this isn't an accident. The 13th Amendment ended slavery in all cases except as punishment for crime. So the United States government intentionally created laws to justify throwing Black people in jail to use as slave labor. Currently, all of these products and more are being made by literal slaves, many of whom were arrested for crimes like marijuana possession. So we can clearly see that your race does, in fact, greatly impact your quality of life and life expectancy in the United States, and Black people deserve to be listened to with regards to these issues. Unnatural Vegan does acknowledge that Black people and white people have different experiences, but she says that these experiences are only important insofar as they help get people to care about these issues. When it comes to solutions, she thinks
race doesn't matter. We're all different with different ideas. And you can be white and have a better solution, a more evidence-driven solution for this than a Black person. So I mean, look, if there was some coalition focused on ending police brutality and there isn't a single Black person, like, yeah, that'd be kind of weird, and you would maybe wonder why there isn't, and like you would want at least some influence. But having, collectives which are unapologetically Black led, I don't understand why that's necessary.
Well, I can think of two main reasons why this is necessary. The first is that Black people's unique experiences make them uniquely able to come up with solutions. The people who have police patrolling their neighborhoods and targeting their families on a daily basis are much more knowledgeable about police brutality than the people who call the cops on a Black man for telling them to put a leash on their dog. Plus, Black communities have generational knowledge about institutional racism. They learn from their families about the Central Park Five, the Tulsa Massacre, the multiple bombings in Birmingham, the rampant arson in the Bronx, and so much more horrific history that most white people just don't learn about. And Black people can see that no amount of reform has ever stopped a police officer from covering up their body cam and shooting a Black person anyway. Meanwhile, white people who don't have this firsthand experience are currently like,
OMG, but I thought Abraham Lincoln fixed slavery, and then MLK fixed segregation, and then Obama and Beyonce fixed everything else, so there's no way that racism could still exist.
So yeah, when Black people and white people look at the same data which is, by the way, compiled and reported by these very corrupt police departments and governments, Black people have a much greater and more nuanced understanding of the issue, which will help them come up with a better solution. Not to mention that Black people have much more of a stake in the matter, which brings me to my second point, that white people can't be in charge of fixing a problem that we benefit from perpetuating. This video is specifically addressed to vegans, so I'll make a vegan analogy here. As Jonathan Safran Foer, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, says in Eating Animals, KFC has a long history of abusing its chickens, despite claiming to be committed to their well-being and humane treatment. KFC's Animal Welfare Council is made up of their own executives and other leaders in the meat production industry. So no one should be surprised to find out that these people who profit from the inhumane treatment of animals aren't really interested in changing anything. As the book says, KFC's commitment to animal welfare signifies nothing. Similarly, as I have already discussed, racism is profitable to white people in many ways, including the fact that over-policing and incarcerating Black people provides literal slave labor to countless corporations so that they can keep their prices low. So why should anyone trust white people to come up with actual solutions to these problems when we have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo? A white-led coalition will come up with reforms like 8 Can't Wait, which is just promising and just misleading enough to appease most people who aren't really paying attention, but it won't actually solve any problems. And even if there are Black people in the coalition, it's beyond easy for a white leader to discredit and disregard their opinions and treat them as nothing more than tokens so that the organization can claim that they're creating cooperative solutions. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. White people have shown time and time again that we're not able or willing to fix things ourselves. So yeah, the only real solutions are the ones that Black activists are demanding. The next slide in that Instagram post encourages white people to combat racism in white communities instead of doing vegan activism in Black communities, which Unnatural Vegan disagrees with. She says,
veganism is for everyone. It's for white people and it's for Black people. What's the problem with going and introducing this concept to people who may not even know that it's a thing, and educating people regardless of skin color?
Well, Black people are currently having to deal with the trauma of their community members being murdered and the videos being shared all over social media. These communities are currently grieving and literally fighting for their lives on the streets and on GoFundMes and in legislation And now is not the fucking time to go into their neighborhoods and try to make them go vegan. Unnatural Vegan acknowledges that it would be bad optics for an entirely white group to do this, and that it would be tone deaf to do this in an impoverished neighborhood, yet she still thinks that right now, while we are engaged in a worldwide debate over whether Black Lives Matter, there are apparently Black vegans whose priority is to spread veganism? I don't want to speak for Black vegans here, but I feel like it's not great to be asking that of them right now, especially in a video like this where you are acknowledging that the vegan community has a race problem, but saying that white vegans have no responsibility to speak up on race issues. So what? We don't have to stand with them when they're getting slaughtered, but it's okay for us to go into their neighborhoods to try and get them to stand with us against the slaughter of animals? Again, what is causing the disconnect between her critique of others on the basis of intersectionality and inclusivity and her own unwillingness to listen to and platform Black voices? I personally think that it's at least partially due to a staunch sense of American individualism. She even brings up the idea of idealistic American values with regards to racial inequality.
That's not what this country is about.
American culture convinces us that there is nothing more sacred than our individuality and freedom, which can lead us to ignore or at least downplay the effects of social structures in our lives. It is instilled in us that we are solely responsible for our own decisions and the outcomes of our decisions.
Oh, Black people are poor because they're lazy. That sort of bullshit.
To the point where even if we know that social factors are influencing our lived experiences, we tend to ignore them in our interactions with others. I think this might explain why she seems so short-sighted, so many S's, when it comes to some of the more nuanced aspects of allyship, like supporting Black-led groups and not starting your own activism in Black communities. She's just seeing it as an individual interacting with an individual, so there's no need to consider the social implications of the interaction. But the only people who are ever truly able to ignore their social positions during an interaction are the people with more power. White people don't have to think about what it means for Black people when we enter their spaces because we're accustomed to being able to go anywhere. White people don't have to think about how to present ourselves when talking to Black people because we're accustomed to being taken seriously regardless of our tone or our accent. White Americans have the privilege to not think about how our presence and actions will affect others. I also think it's noteworthy that Unnatural Vegan brings up the idea of choice so much, another big American value. She stresses that she's not going to tell anyone how to spend their money and that everyone is free to donate to whatever cause they would like.
We choose, my partner and I choose to give our money, at least for the last few years, pretty much exclusively to animal charities, to effective animal charities. I'm not going to tell people how exactly to spend their money. I don't think anyone should feel like they have to give money to a particular cause.
And she uses terminology like,
for those of us who do want to be inclusive,
throughout the video. Again, this is an effect of American conditioning telling us that we are all free to make whatever choices we want. And on the flip side of that, we shouldn't try to tell anyone else what decisions they should make. So Unnatural Vegan makes sure to say that you are free to donate or not donate, and support or not support, and listen or not listen, even though she will identify and call out these issues of racism when she sees other people doing them. She's not willing to make any strong calls to action to her audience. But is that good? Is that okay? After she posted this video, Unnatural Vegan immediately got a lot of pushback in the comments and on social media. She posted on Twitter a little bit later, saying she wasn't going to take the video down because she stands by her point that no one is morally obligated to show support for Black Lives Matter. Of course, she got more responses that ranged from patient to sassy to downright mean. She replied to some, but none really in depth. And then she dug her heels in deeper. She quote tweeted herself saying, Can someone please show me why I'm wrong here? This is my main argument, yet no one has even come close to addressing it. Why do vegans have to talk about George Floyd, but not other atrocities? By this point, multiple people, including me, had already responded to her original tweet with lots of really strong points that she did not respond to. So why would she pretend to not see them and continue promoting this harmful message? By refusing to encourage the overwhelmingly white vegan community to support Black Lives Matter, she is sending a message to vegans of all races that we have no responsibility to each other. We have no responsibility to make our movement more inclusive. We have no responsibility to stand with other oppressed groups. We have no responsibility to call each other out for our harmful behavior. We do have a responsibility to show compassion to animals, but no such responsibility to show compassion to other humans. Towards the end of her video, Unnatural Vegan mentions some people's comments on this Instagram post on allyship that she was talking about.
A lot of the comments are like, this is confusing, and I thought this was about animals, and what are you doing? I mean, there are some like assholes in there, but I think for the most part, people are just like, thought this was about animals. What's going on? Like, what is this?
And the fact that there were so many people asking why a vegan Instagram would post about Black Lives Matter, the fact that there were so many exclusionary and racist posts that Unnatural Vegan addressed in this video, these are all examples of why we needed her to make a video wholeheartedly condemning racism within the vegan community instead of validating it under the guise of personal choice. There are so many people who don't understand the connection between anti-racist activism and vegan activism. So many people who feel the need to speak up for a chicken, but not for Black people. What does it mean that so many vegans can empathize with a cow enough to protest at farms and yell at their friends for eating a hamburger, but can't empathize enough with a Black person to affirm their right to exist? Recent events have really illuminated the attitudes and priorities of this community, and it is not pretty. Unnatural Vegan may not want to infringe on someone's personal decisions, but when communities are being systematically murdered, our responsibility to each other is more important than our responsibility to the ideal of American individualism. Unnatural Vegan talked about how intersectionality makes movements less focused and less effective, but I actually think that in most cases, it's the opposite. Food affects people in profound ways, so the movement to go vegan can have a much larger impact and reach than people might immediately think. The anti-racist goal of decolonizing our diets is incredibly compatible with the vegan goal of decreasing animal consumption. The anti-racist goal of eliminating food deserts is incredibly compatible with the vegan goal of defunding the meat and dairy industries. The anti-racist goal of paying farm workers livable wages is incredibly compatible with the vegan goal of eating ethically and sustainably. So when we support other movements, we don't water down our message. We find common ground and build coalitions and get shit done. 8% of Black Americans are vegan, compared to 3% of Americans overall. And veganism is growing fastest in Black communities. You would absolutely never know that by looking at almost any online vegan community, and that's because of shit like this. It's because of white vegans who think that their ethical obligation is fulfilled once they stop eating animal products, and it's because of white vegans who validate that apathy. As a leading voice in the online vegan community, particularly with people who are interested in nuanced, non-dogmatic ethics, I really expected better from Unnatural Vegan. I've been watching her videos for a while now, and I do really respect her, and that's why I made this entire video in response, because I think she can do better, and I think we as a vegan community can have a more productive conversation that might help us become more intersectional and inclusive. And in doing that, we might actually gain a lot of support instead of just pushing people away.
Hopefully she has learned something and taken away something from both of these videos.